Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm here to talk to you about rereading books, and I would like to share the reasons why I have so many difficulties with rereading books. Every time I think about picking up a book that I've read before, I feel guilty, and I'm trying to work on that. I recently told you that I would like to reread Life Inside by Mindy Lewis, and I would like to do it this year, but honestly I don't know if I'll be able to, just because of these issues. The first issue I have with rereading books is time management. I consider myself a slow reader. It's very difficult for me to read more than 2 or 3 books in a month. Not just because obviously I work, but even when I was a student I had difficulties with that. And university was quite hard, considering that I have a first degree in literature and culture and a master's degree in Anglo-American studies, literature and culture as well. And obviously for each class we had like 4 books to read. And that's without counting, with all the literary criticism that comes with it. I always struggle a lot with reading many books at the same time, and at the same time I always struggle with having to read them like in a week. So I was that student, that annoying student. I would start reading the books assigned for each class over the summer, and that's not a very common practice here. At least I don't remember having a lot of colleagues doing that, so I don't know if that's common where you live. It wasn't because I was worried, I just wanted to make sure that I would be able to actually read the books. And assessment at university, at least at my faculty, is very specific, and it is something that I hate. I'm not going to get into it, the reasons why I hate the assessment during my degree, but basically most of my literature classes were assessed with 1 final exam, and that's just ridiculous, meaning that we would not have to read all the books. So if I had 4 books for one of my classes, I would probably be able to read 2 books and get away with it. We would never have an exam and have to answer like all the 4 questions, 1 for each novel. We would have to pick like 1 or 2. It gave me a lot more freedom, and I was able to choose the novels that I wanted to focus on, but at the same time I never really liked that form of assessment. I just think it's ridiculous. I'm a fan of writing essays and preparing presentations, and I can do all of that in my sleep, but exams, tests, just horrible. I don't test well, I can study for months and months, and then I'll get there and I'll blank. Time management now is a lot more complicated because I have a full-time job. I'm a teacher, I work at a school, and I try my best to always prepare my classes ahead. So I try to get all of my classes planned for like the whole week plus the following week, or at least half of the following week if I can plan everything. And I try to do all of my like little things that you have to do during the week while I'm at work, because I do have a lot of breaks between classes, so I can always like correct tests or worksheets or prepare something, and I'm always busy, and I try to do all of that while I'm at work. So I rarely take books with me, just because I'm always thinking, oh, I have an hour free, I'm going to use it to do this, and I try my best not to have to bring a lot of work home. Obviously you always have those busy weeks with tests, and you have to plan projects with the class, and you just have a lot of tests correct at the same time, and meetings, and you have to prepare meetings. So obviously you have really busy weeks, and sometimes I have, like everybody, I have to bring my work home. So when I get home I always have some time to myself, during the evening. But it's like I told my mom the other day, people don't even realize it, but teachers deal with kids like the entire day, and we're talking about children, and obviously you get exhausted. So when I get home I'm not always prepared to read. I'm not in the mood, and I just want to sit on the couch and watch some YouTube or watch a film or just a sitcom and relax and then sleep, because I'm not really in the mood to read. I try to read a little bit every day. In the mornings now I'm trying to do that, and I think that the fact that I'm in quarantine, I've been able to sort of organize my schedule a little bit more, because I don't actually have to leave the house to go to work. So I'm reading a lot more now because I am at home, but at the same time, even working from home, it's ridiculously busy. Time management is a huge thing for me because I always feel guilty that, you know, I'm not reading, I'm watching a sitcom, or I'm watching like Family Guy or American Dad because I love watching that. And I feel guilty, like I should be reading. And then I try and I get frustrated because I'm not in the mood. So that plus being a slow reader, obviously I'm not going to read a lot of books in 1 month, and that's why I always struggle with filming monthly wrap-ups. I rarely do that because sometimes I go an entire month without finishing a book. I'm reading, but I'm not finishing them. And yeah, I feel guilty in the sense that if I pick up a book that I've read before, I mean, that doesn't really count, right? I'm gonna read it a lot faster because I already know the story quite well. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason has to do with university, and that's why I mentioned university to begin with. And that's the pressure. I studied literature for 6 years. So obviously I studied a lot of authors, and you know, I read a lot of criticism, and I wrote a lot of essays, and I sort of focus on specific areas of literature that I really liked. So and obviously I have a preference if I have to pick, for example, a time period or an author from a certain literary movement, but I haven't read all of them. And I remember being at a conference. I think it was a man, and he was just presenting his paper, and I don't remember the topic, but he was talking about a book, and I remember commenting with my colleagues after we left and saying, oh, I've never read that book. A colleague of mine, she was my age at the time, I think she's like a couple of months younger than me, but we were the same age. She just sort of embarrassed me in front of everybody, saying that how can you be a literature student and now you're confessing that you've never read that book? Like, it's a classic. I feel like at my faculty, at least, I'm talking about my experience as a literature student at my faculty. I don't know if you felt the same way, if you studied literature, but I think that like the circle is like really close. It's sort of an elite. And that's why on the one hand, I understand when people trash people who only read classics, in the sense that, you know, the majority is a snob and they think they're better than everybody else because they only read classics, even though I disagree with it because I hate YA and I don't trash people who read YA. But I don't film videos, and I never commented on my vlogs that, oh my god, YA is horrible, I don't know how you can read YA. I mean, I don't understand it, but I just don't trash people online because of it. I follow a lot of people on YouTube and on Instagram that post a lot about YA, and I can follow them. We can have different preferences and we can still get along, and we can still like learn a lot from each other. So I don't have an issue with people who read YA. I have an issue with people who trash people who don't. But on the other hand, I also understand when people feel uncomfortable around people that only read classics, because I've met a lot of people that only read classics or literary fiction, and they are kind of snobbish. It's a two-way street. I don't agree with either group. I just think that you should just let people be, and if they want to read something, that let them read it. And if you don't like an author, or you don't like a genre, or you just don't like what the person is reading, it's none of your business. You don't have to click on that video, and you don't have to like that photo. But even so, I've met a lot of people at university that were really snobbish, and just they sort of have their own little group. For example, I always felt horrible that I only read The Picture of Dorian Gray this year. But being a literature student, you don't have a lot of time to read for fun. Like I said, you know, I had to pick what I could read and when I had to read them, because being a slow reader, I didn't have time to read books for class and then read books for fun. And I never studied Oscar Wilde at university. I never had that pleasure. So The Picture of Dorian Gray is a classic, and a very important classic for that matter. And I know that a lot of people, you know, just treasure it, but at the time I just didn't have what it took. I didn't have the time management skills, and I didn't have the concentration perhaps to read it. If I said this to some of my colleagues at the time, I would be, you know, just completely embarrassed, because they would make fun of me, they would make me feel horrible about it. To give you an example, I was in a class, I don't remember which one. I know that I was doing my first degree, and we had to read 4 books for the class. But because the exam was a final exam and it had 4 questions, and I think we had to pick either 3 or 2, I don't remember. I know 2 of the questions that I picked, but I think we had a third. And I picked the one on Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson and the one about Kim by Kipling. There was one book that I didn't read for that class, basically because I just didn't have the time and had more classes and more books to read, and I had to make choices and, and get my priorities straight. I have that book because I honestly thought that would be the one that I was going to choose. It ended up not being that, but I got it anyway, and I haven't read it. And that's Ian Foster's A Passage to India. And every time I look at this book, I feel guilty. I feel horrible that I've never read this book. But that doesn't mean that my experiences and the books that I've read and that I know and I'm well versed on, are not valid. But I always feel that pressure, and it's still like, I still feel it. Sometimes, I look at this book and I'm like embarrassed, and I sort of want to hide it because I don't want anyone to know that I didn't read it. A lot of people doing my first master's degree that were just, an elite and really snobbish about books that we had to read because we are literature students and these are classics, so you have to read, you cannot sleep, you have to read all of them. I feel guilty about rereading books that I already know so well, and I know I would have a lot of fun rereading them, but at the same time I think maybe I should read a book that I haven't read, and it is part of the Anglo-American canon and it is a classic and I should read it, because otherwise I'm a fraud and they should just take my degree back. On the other hand, I do read a lot of literary fiction, I do read a lot of classics, but I know that I haven't read all of them, especially the ones that maybe a lot of people have read and they're like the standard, and I haven't. That kind of bums me out. I never studied Anne Bronte or Emily Bronte, and I love them, but I had to study Charlotte Bronte. I had to read Jane Eyre twice, in Portugal and in the UK. I mean, she has more novels, people. Why do we always have to read Jane Eyre? I mean, I don't like it that much, and I wish that I had the opportunity to study Emily Bronte or Anne Bronte. And I read books by these authors, and I felt so good after reading them, because I was like, now I can talk about the Bronte sisters and I can compare them, because now I know what I'm talking about and no one can tell me otherwise, and people are going to listen to me because I have proof. I read a book by each of them. But then you have someone saying, oh, but I read all the novels by Charlotte Bronte, and I haven't. I think you know what I mean. It's just, I feel guilty that being a literature student for so long, and basically I have 2 degrees in literature, and I haven't read all the books by, classic authors that are just the standard. I have this idea for a 3-part video on 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. When I read Murakami, I read the Portuguese translation, and in Portugal, like, his really long books are divided into volumes, and 1Q84 has 3 volumes. So I have this really cool idea for a 3-part video on 1Q84, but I also feel like I should reread the series. I call it a series, like I call it a trilogy, because it is divided into 3. But I have this feeling that I should reread the books, because I think that my experience would be different. Also, I think it will help me prepare those videos, and I'm sure that when I start preparing those videos I'm gonna have questions, and so if I reread the books, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, I look at them and I think, I have 3 other books by Haruki Murakami that I haven't read. What is more important here? Am I wasting my time rereading 3 books I have already read, loved, and have the copies, when I should be reading these 3, Kafka on the Shore, what I talk about when I talk about running, and Norwegian Wood, because I haven't read these and I have them. I feel guilty that I'm considering reading these 3 instead of these 3. I feel guilty that I haven't read Anna Karenina and War and Peace. I have the books, but I haven't got to them yet. I have read other things by Tolstoy, but these are the standard, right? These are the ones that people look at when you say that, oh, I like Tolstoy's writing. When you say something like that, they're going to ask you if you have read Anna Karenina or War and Peace, and you're going to tell them no, and so you're not important anymore. It sort of feels that way. On the one hand, I know it's okay that I'm reading other things and that I'm not yet done with all the books that I should have read maybe while I was studying. But there's always that voice, you know, telling you that you shouldn't reread that book because you have read it before, you know the story. Read one that you haven't and one that is important. So this is sort of a follow-up video to a video that I posted a while ago talking about people who just trash on other people that just read classics, and I'm completely against that. But I'm also against people who read classics trashing on people who don't. I would really be interested in knowing your opinion on this matter, so let me know down below. Do you reread books? Do you ever feel guilty? Can you see yourself in my position? Have you ever had to go through a situation similar to mine or not? That's it for today. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are well, and oh, happy Easter, by the way, because today's Saturday. Happy Easter if you celebrate Easter. I'll talk to you soon. So bye.